Jai Hind and welcome to Dev Talks, to another episode where we discuss the People's Liberation Army Navy of the Chinese state. We've gone through a lot, myself and Lieutenant General Ravi Shankar, who's here with me once again. Sir, thank you so much. As I was saying, we've gone through a lot from discussing their base, what they have to fight, what areas they want to fight, especially with India. And the last one that we did was on mountain warfare, which was a very interesting episode, a little long, but a very interesting episode because we went through the details of the entire terrain between India and China and how a future war would look like. Right now, we're going to discuss the Chinese Ocean dilemma. It's a huge subject that the Chinese are focusing a lot into. As a matter of fact, we also see the development of the Quad, the AUKUS, and there are obviously a lot of rumors where there are small other groups which are forming in because of the Chinese belligerence in the sea. I think we've all heard one or two news articles about the South China Sea dilemma, the first island chain, second island chain, and so on and so forth. This episode, we want to make sense of all that, give you a total picture of the entire area, and how does Indian Ocean and India's involvement come into that entire area. So, sir, thank you so much. I think it's a journey that we are going through on the PLA, and it's been an interesting ride till now.
Thanks a lot, Adi. It's very important for us to understand that terrain, as we had discussed in the last thing, is very important. Similarly, the marine geography and which connects with the Chinese designs to dominate the oceans and their naval expansion also has a bearing. So unless we understand the military, maritime geography of China and its operating environment, I think we might not be able to understand what the Chinese ocean development is all about or maritime development is all about. So I think it's going to be an interesting talk. Let's start.
Sure, sir. As a matter of fact, just to begin this discussion, we all know that the Chinese are very, very, strong in terms of their ports. Their eastern part of their country is filled up with ports, and that's where their entire economy comes out of. They call it the special economic zones. Along with that, can I request you to take us through not just the Chinese, but the surrounding maritime geography of that entire area for us to get a better understanding?
Yeah, sure. Right. If you have a look at this map, the Google map, you see China, and you'll see the entire east coast of China, which is seaborne, has its orientation only in the Pacific Ocean. China has got no access to the Indian Ocean. That's the first thing which I'd like to say. And China has got a large sea coast with a whole lot of ports and a whole lot of countries which surround China. We'll go step by step. We'll first have a look at the Chinese ports. Right? Now you have a look at this. You see all the important ports of China are along the east coast. In fact, they have only one coast. Okay. Many of them are, kind of big ports and small ports. But that's a different story, right? We'll just see with this, how does the geography of this area look like? Because that is important to understand to see the marine reach of China. Right. If I look at the overall marine geography of the world, what comes out is that between the Indian Ocean, in fact all the oceans have a whole lot of choke points. Starting from the right, you see the Panama Canal, right, then the Malacca Strait. Along the Arabian Peninsula and the Horn of Africa, you have the Suez Canal, the Strait of Hormuz, and the Bab el Mandeb, and then further to the west, you have the Straits of Gibraltar, and down south you have the Cape of Good Hope. Right, and of course to the north you have the Turkish Strait, which is also called the Bosphorus. Now, these are the ones which, constrict the sea lanes of communication. This is to give you an overview. There are other minor ports, minor choke points. We'll touch upon each of them.
Sure.
Now, first we'll see about the marine geography and how it affects China. When you look at this map, you see that on the left is the Indian Ocean, on the right is the Pacific Ocean. If you look around China, you'll see that the color of the ocean is in light blue. And farther away, it is dark blue. Now, we'll come back to this map later in the presentation and the discussion. But this map tells you that the area around China is all shallow water. The depth of the Chinese coastal territorial waters is just about 40 meters to about 200 meters. Right? And if you see beyond the light blue line of which surrounds the Chinese coast, you see a whole lot of islands. And this light blue covers up to that islands almost. Japan, Taiwan, Philippines, and all that. As a result, you cannot deploy your huge navy there. Okay. Now, we all know that, China is developing its navy, and it's the one with the biggest fleet today in the world. Right? So, Adi, why don't you just put us through the number of ships and what all they have, so that everyone gets a.
So, this is something that I found in a study that was being done as a comparative between the Chinese and the United States, because that's the whole game with regards to the number of ships. They've got, we can see they've got more than 355 ships is what they say, 2 aircraft carriers, 145 major surface combatants, 33 destroyers, cruisers, 49 frigates, 255 coastal support ships. That's interesting. The largest bulk of them are support ships. 56 submarines and 240,000 personnel. And their fleet tonnage is about 1.8 million tons, comparison to the United States, which is about 4.9 million tons. They have, of course, plans, as Sir will tell you, about the third aircraft carrier, which is under construction. They call it 003 at the moment. And, of course, a lot more in the pipeline, nuclear submarines, and so on and so forth.
See, the point what I'm trying to make is, they have this huge navy which has come up. This entire navy can't be sitting is not meant to be protecting China. It is meant to go out. It is the interplay between this huge navy and its territorial geography, maritime geography, which dictates its larger issues. So let's go further. Right. This map gives you a outline idea about the Pacific and the constricting passages in the Pacific. From north to south, if you look at it, you have the Miyako-jima Strait, the Luzon Strait, the Mindanao Strait, the Balabac Strait. Then you have a set of 3 straits, Lombok, Sunda, and Malacca Straits. Now, these 4 straits which are at the top constrict passages within the Pacific in conjunction with the land masses around the East China Sea, South China Sea, and the LOC. Whereas the bottom 3 straits are the connections between the Pacific and the Indian Ocean, which we'll talk about later. So first, let's look at just the Pacific part. Right. Now, when you look at this, you see the inset, which we had seen earlier, and now you look at the whole thing. From the top to bottom, first and foremost, there's Jima Strait, which is between, it's also known as the Strait of Japan. It connects the Sea of Japan with the LOC. So, right. And then there's a line of islands which come down from Japan to Taiwan. From Taiwan, there's another line of islands which goes down to Philippines and then on to further south. Now you see where all these star marks are there. Those are the straits, and passage in this mass of ocean has to be from these straits. You can't put a navy through with just about 8-9 straits. You don't have free passage there. You can't take a boat anywhere you want. And that also probably explains why they have so many small patrol boats.
Hmm.
They have to patrol a whole lot of small areas, right? So if you see, they have developed their navy as per their local geography, which tells you that their navy is going to be very strong locally, but it will not have a long reach because the heavier tonnage, ships are lesser. Okay. And it fits in well at this point of time with the gray zone activities which they're carrying out in South China Sea. We'll come to that. And the Navy is uh, developed for local area dominance. Let's see the next one. Right. Now, I did spoke, if you saw in the previous slide, on the top right, you have Japan. At the bottom of this thing, you have the Okinawa chain of islands,
Mhm.
right? And from the Okinawa chain of islands, it links to Taiwan. And from Taiwan, it comes to Philippines and down further down to Borneo and all these places. Now, this is called the first island chain. Why is the first island chain important? Till such time this first island chain is broken or China can get over it, it doesn't get access to deep waters. If it doesn't get access to deep waters, it cannot deploy its navy freely. And we also saw that the passages through this first island chain is restricted by the Mindanao Bay, Mindanao Strait, Baalbek Strait, and then the the Jima Strait, right, between the Sea of Japan and the East China Sea. And these are all shallow waters. Okay. Now, once that is gone through, you come to the second island chain. What is the second island chain? The second island chain links Japan, right, to Guam. Now, Guam is an American base.
Yes.
Okay. And down further to Indonesia. Right? Now, if you look at it from the other point of view, Guam controls this entire area. So any naval movement in the Pacific, Guam is the centerpiece. So unless Guam is taken out of the equation, the Chinese Navy doesn't get a free passage.
Run through.
And the next thing is that if the Chinese Navy has to get a adequate deployability, it has to have adequate air defense. Why it needs air defense? Because USA from Guam has many air bases around with which it can dominate the entire area.
True.
The Pacific around China. So can we see a map which shows the air bases of USA? So if you look at this map, it very clearly tells you all the blue stars are where USA is present. Okay. And they're all present along the first island chain. They also have a pact with Philippines. They also have an equation with Malaysia and Indonesia. So the US presence with the Air Force rings China. It ring fences China. Right? In effect, as of today, the Chinese mainland is under threat from outside elements, any adversary. That is from the first island chain. That's the importance of the first island chain. Visualize the flip side of it. If China were to get hold of the first island chain, then the Navy is based on the first island chain and operates outward. So any attack on the Chinese mainland is virtually ruled out. The first island chain is critical. Right? Okay.
That kind of explains his, quest for Taiwan, if I may put it that way.
Yeah, he has to. The moment that Taiwan is broken, everything else is this thing. And that is what he is doing. He is making his own first island chain. And why? How is he doing it? He is doing it through the 9-dash line.
Correct, sir.
Now, this explains to us the 9-dash line. This is the 9-dash line which is made. Earlier it used to be the 11-dash line which went up to Vietnam. They had equation with Vietnam, and now it's become a 9-dash line. Anything within this 9-dash line, they claim is theirs. That's one part of the story. But this is South China Sea. In the South China Sea, every country around, Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia, Borneo, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, everyone has overlapping claims. But China is forcing its way through. If you see in the north, in the Paracel Islands, they've built artificial islands and they have got hold of a few islands and they've made a base there. Right? Now, north of the Paracel Islands is Hong Kong. Okay. So now they have one line which is Hong Kong, Paracel Islands to Taiwan, and if they can get hold of some part of the Senkakus, they have their own first island chain. So that is why Taiwan becomes critical. Now, unless they get Paracel, they cannot control the South China Sea and move forward. Okay. And only when they get hold of Paracels completely, they can go to Spratlys. They've got hold of Paracels completely now. So now you see in their raison activities, their militia going up to Spratlys. And now they're getting into problems with Indonesian Navy, Malaysian Navy, the Philippines Navy, and the whole thing is going on. They have to get these two. The day they can get this, they control South China Sea. And right, so their aim is to get Paracels, Spratlys, Taiwan, maybe some part of Senkakus, and then they can be an ocean-faring nation. That also solves their Malacca dilemma to a large extent. Right? So we've now looked at the Pacific part of it. Now let's see the connect between the Pacific and the Indian Ocean.
So before we go forward, I'd like to ask you, a couple of months ago, we had a standoff with the Philippines and where they used the Chinese naval militia. The depth of the water, is that the reason that they use these kind of small militia boats?
Yeah, small boats. Precisely. The South China Sea and the East China Sea and the LOC does not permit heavy tonnages. They have to go in for small boats, small militias, because the waters are shallow. Right. Now, when you look at this slide, you see that there are basically, at this point of time, 4 passages from the Pacific, which is on the east to the Indian Ocean, which is on the west. The first passage, as we know, is through the Strait of Malacca. Right? That's a standard passage. Unless the Chinese Navy goes through Malacca, they go nowhere. The second passage is through the Sunda Straits. Right? Now, Sunda Straits is okay for normal passage, but it's in the territorial waters of Indonesia. And the depth of Sunda Strait does not permit nuclear submarines to go through. So, if you want to transit nuclear submarines to go through, you have to come through Lombok Straits or the Ombai-Wetar Straits. Okay.
That's vulnerable, sir.
Yeah, it's vulnerable. So, you know that the nuclear submarines have to deploy only through these 2 straits. So, firstly, if a nuclear submarine exits China, it has to come through the Luzon Straits or the Mindanao Straits or one of these straits and get to Ombai-Wetar or Lombok. They can't go through Malacca and this thing because they're all about 200-meter depth straits, the Sunda and right. So there's a problem. Now, if you see here in this slide, there's this Kra Canal. What is Kra Canal? China is trying to put a canal similar to what the Americans did in Panama long back. Put a canal across the Malaysian isthmus as shown in the red, which means that they don't have to go through Malacca Strait. What does it do if Kra Canal is 0 days? It gives them 2 to 3 days if they don't go through advantage over Malacca Strait, another 4 to 5 days over Lombok, and another 5 to 6 days over Sunda, and 5 to 6 days over Lombok. But more importantly, it gives them another avenue. It breaks their Malacca dilemma to a large extent. Right? So this is the connect. And unless China is able to handle these straits, it cannot get into the Indian Ocean. And they cannot handle these straits unless they get hold of Spratlys.
It's quite a vicious circle for them.
Yeah. It is, if you go backward regression, to get the straits, they have need Spratlys. To get Spratlys, they need Paracels. They've got Paracels. They have to get Spratlys, and then they have to get control over this. Simultaneously, they have to break away from, Guam, which is the American base. And of course, you have to understand that to get free passages and do what they want here, they have to also contend with the navies of this region. And they're pretty strong navies. Right? And as we said earlier, do they have the ability to come so far out after taking care of their mainland defense, which is still vulnerable, taking care of their bases in between, which they have not yet created? The nearest base is Paracels. Right? So the residual power is only what they can project across these four straits. Yeah. Now, but then that's not the end of the story. The moment they cross, they hit Andaman Nicobar. So let's see that.
Here, of course, I mean, Taiwan is going to be a big stumbling speed breaker for them.
Yeah, till they get Taiwan, they really don't have a great hope on becoming an ocean-faring nation. Yeah. Now, when you look at this, you see the the Indian subcontinent comes down along Malaysia, right, and ends there, Thailand, Malaysia, and you see the Indonesia, and you see the Malacca Strait. Whether it's through the Kra Canal or the Malacca Strait, if any navy comes through these, it gets into the Andaman Nicobar. So you see the inset, they have to get into the 10-degree channel. What is 10-degree channel? 10-degree channel is the sea between Port Blair and Car Nicobar, or rather the Nicobar chain of islands and the southernmost part of the Andaman chain of islands. Right? Look, why I said Port Blair and Car Nicobar, because both these are Indian military bases. Okay, Indian Air Force operates from both these.
Correct.
It's public knowledge.
Yes.
So they constructed again. They have to hit Andaman and they have to break through Andaman. And mind you, they have to break through with the residual power they can put through. This is a choke point. Right? Now, it's not only this. When you look at the southernmost part of Andaman Nicobar, to the northernmost part of Indonesia, that is the Banda Aceh, there is also the 6-degree channel. So this is the 6-degree channel. That's the area which comes, as you see, the Andaman Nicobar Islands and the northern part of Indonesia, that is Banda Aceh. The area between that is the 6-degree channel. So even if they get out of Malacca, to get across Andaman Nicobar, they have only 2 channels. Then alternately, they have to capture some island in the Andaman Nicobar and develop it and then move forward. So it's a big ask at this point of time.
What Maybe about
further down the line, things might change. But here I'd like you to focus on something else. Where this thing has come, 6-degree channel, if you look to the north, you see a whole lot of reefs going up and down.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. They are underwater reefs. It's not as if it's free open ocean that you can go anywhere you want and however you want. Right? And these reefs are something which will restrict passage of heavy ships. You can't just go wherever you want in the sea also. So let's see this geography in the next slide. Yeah, if you look at it, you see the Andaman Nicobar group on the left, which is pretty shallow around, light blue. comes down to Indonesia, again shallow, Malacca Strait, shallow. And on the right corner, you see the Spratlys. These islands are Spratlys, and to the north, you see Paracels. Even when they get hold of Paracel and Spratlys, till they exit Andaman, they're in shallow waters, where deployability is restricted. So they have to get hold of Spratlys, they have to dominate Malacca, and then they have to this thing. The only way to get around Malacca is to get across at Karakanal. Right? So it's a difficult task. Their marine geography is not favorable to them. The alternate to this is they have the two ocean theory, which we can discuss.
Absolutely. And then there are countries, Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand, Malaysia, so many countries.
Yeah, all these people, they'll not give a free passage. So China has a long way to go before it comes into this thing. Rightly, some of their people have said that Andaman Nicobar is an iron curtain in front of them. Okay, now this gives the geography, the expanse of the Indian Ocean. Now, if you look at this map, if China wants to dominate and become a major naval power, it has to dominate Indian Ocean. Also, it has to be a two-ocean fleet. Okay, right now it doesn't have access to Indian Ocean. Okay, we'll talk of how it's trying to get access to the Indian Ocean a little later, but we'll look at the larger picture of the Indian Ocean. If you see the Indian Ocean from the Horn of Africa, which is on the left, where that 500 kilometers is written, you see that place is the Bab el Mandab. It looks like a horn, a rhino's horn. That's why it's called the Horn of Africa. Go along, if you draw a line right up to Andaman Nicobar, the expanse is about 5,000 kilometers. Okay, now if you look in this, on the right side, you have four straits which we spoke of: Malacca Strait, Sunda, Lombok, and Mumbai Wetar. They constrict entry into this thing. If you look to the left, from the top, you have the Strait of Hormuz, Bab el Mandeb, the Madagascar Channel, and the Cape of Good Hope. All these constrict movement. But more interestingly, if you see south of India, you see Maldives, Lakshadweep, Maldives, and Diego Garcia, which I've marked. Diego Garcia, Maldives, and Lakshadweep lie on one reef, and Diego Garcia is an American base.
True.
With Guam, Guam controls the Pacific. Diego Garcia, if you see, it's so centrally located, it controls the entire Indian Ocean. And Diego Garcia, with the strategic partnership with India and the presence of Lakshadweep and Maldives now being neutral, China doesn't have a leg to stand on in the Indian Ocean.
But the Indian base,
so unless they have a base, they cannot progress anywhere. That is why China is trying to get hold of a base. Right? Its only base is in Djibouti, far to the north. Now, so this is what I had to say about the Indian Ocean. So you had a question on the two ocean.
As a matter of fact, yes, sir. But before that, I'd like to ask you now, the Chinese are also trying to get into Gwadar. They're trying to get into...
Yeah. Why are they trying to get into Gwadar? See, the moment they get to Gwadar, they get an access from Xinjiang to Gwadar through the CPEC. Similarly, they are also trying, where Andaman is written, to the north of it, there's a port called, Myanmarese port called Kya Phu. They are trying to get a connect through the China-Myanmar economic corridor from Yunnan down to Kya Phu and develop it into a base there. Okay. Unless they do this, so that means that two-ocean strategy depends on getting a base in Indian Ocean. And that could be Gwadar or Kya Phu or through the Kra Canal, one of the three. Okay. If they are blocked here, they are in trouble. They are also trying to get hold of some base in Africa, the east coast of Africa.
Eastern coast, yes, sir.
Yeah, but that's Guyana. In the Guyana. But that's in the initial stages. Let's see how it goes. So they don't have bases here. Whereas India has Lakshadweep, which is not, it has got some potential. It's not developed. It can be developed. Maldives has become neutral, and we know Maldives pretty well. Diego Garcia is a major American base. Andaman Nicobar, on one side, you control it completely. On the other side, you have other bases which I'll not talk of on the east coast of Africa. You're firmed in. The next point is the Indian Peninsula juts into the Indian Ocean. That's why it's called the Indian Ocean. Many people don't. I mean, I want to make a point here. There is no other ocean which is named after a country except Indian Ocean.
True.
If you look to the east of India, the distance between Andaman Nicobar to east coast is about 15 to 1700 kilometers. So you are there in range with mutual support of each other. On to the left, the distance about 2,700 to 3,000 kilometers from the western coast up to the Gulf of Oman and the eastern coast of Africa. A little more maybe. I'm just giving you broad figures. But with Lakshadweep in between. Right. So you control Indian Ocean. They have to have power, the residual naval power, so far away without bases to control the Indian Ocean. What does bases mean? Yeah, and we've said that they might have a large navy, but they don't have that kind of navy to project so far. What does bases mean? I mean, people don't understand. Base is not a port. A port is somewhere you just go park your boat and get out. Bases mean security, ammunition, rest and refit, maintenance, and the ability to hide in this thing. It's a long-term affair. It's something like Diego Garcia is a base where you need to have a runway from where you can operate your fighter aircraft.
True.
And the refit and maintenance is not only about ships; it's about submarines. The entire works. That gives you control. When people say that China is going to enter Indian Ocean and we are in danger, we are not in danger. We have the resources to control the Indian Ocean. They don't have. So there is a way to get it. And remember, their aircraft carrier doesn't have enough aircraft as of now. We're going to commission a third aircraft carrier without aircrafts. I'll not get into the details, but anyone can search any net, any capability, and let me know if China has the capability to put 3 aircraft carriers with operational aircraft and send it out.
Support ships, this, that, the whole works.
Yeah, everything.
That's
even 2, if they can send, even if 1 fleet, if they can send into the Indian Ocean, we'll see. At this point of time, they don't have a capability. Though there are news reports coming out, our aircraft carriers, like the US carriers, are going to dominate the world. A long way off.
Right? They don't have any support bases. If something breaks down in the middle of the Indian Ocean, they have to drag the damn thing back all the way back to China.
No, it's not a matter of dragging the thing back. That's not important. But when you fight, you need a pivot.
Yeah.
Which you need a leg to stand on. I've always maintained in maneuver warfare, you establish something called a pivot of maneuver and fight around that. In naval warfare, you fight around your bases. Okay. Hambantota is not a base, it's just a port. Okay. So there's a long way before Hambantota. But Hambantota has a potential because it's got a fully developed port and it's got an airfield. So we have to be very careful to allow any warship to come there and dock and do whatever we have to do for that. Now, this gives you this picture gives you a better idea about not only the straits, the interconnectivity between the straits and the sea lanes of communication. How they operate. The flow of trade and oil is along this. China is vulnerable. It's energy deficient. Its energy has to flow through these pink roads. So apart from the fact that the Chinese Navy has to come out and dominate the Indian Ocean, it also has to protect its inward movement. It might have huge stocks for a year, 2 years, but it's a finite limit. If it gets into a imbroglio with others and they break this chain, they're in a mess.
A lot of trouble.
Virtually, if you look at the BRI map, it also follows something like this.
That's
So
true.
the BRI's outward flow will also get impeded. So till such time, China is not able to dominate these choke points, have bases, and have the wherewithal to project its navy to the east coast of Africa, it will be a very regional navy. Let me also put it, we have only discussed the Indian and the Pacific Oceans. We have not spoken of the Atlantic. We have not spoken of the Arctic. The Arctic chain is opening, or the Antarctic. There's a long way to go for China to dominate these areas. I'm sure China knows about all this. And many people know about it. Every naval person would know about it. And what I'm saying is from pure common sense point of view.
Right, sir. Thank you for that runaround. Actually, from the Eastern Pacific to the Indian Ocean, I think there's a lot that one can understand where the Chinese are probably in a dilemma as to how they should project the naval force into various different places that they need to do today for them to claim to be what they want to be. I'd just like you to spend a minute or two and explain to us about the two ocean theory that you're talking about and how is it so important for China?
See, every superpower has always had access to two oceans.
Mhm.
You look at, USA. It has free access to the Atlantic and the Pacific. You look at Great Britain in the last century. It had Atlantic and the North Seas and the English Channel. It also had access to the Indian Ocean through the base called India. After all, India was part of the British Empire.
True.
So it dominated the world. In fact, it had domination over the Atlantic and the Pacific also because USA was a English colony long back. You look at Russia. Russia had access to the Pacific and the Atlantic.
Both.
No, I won't say Russia, USSR.
USSR.
Right? So you need two oceans to deploy your fleets to be able to get out and not get constrained by one. Now, China is now attempting that. It's got an access to the Pacific, constrained access as we this thing, but it's okay, fine, it'll manage. But it needs an access into the Indian Ocean. That is why it is attempting a base in Guyana, not Guyana, Guinea. It is also at Djibouti, Gwadar, Hambantota, and Kaikafu, and also Kara Canal to overcome the Malacca dilemma. It needs an base in Indian Ocean. Right now, it doesn't have a leg to stand on. The day it does that, it will be a superpower.
Interesting. So then the only successful base that they've been able to develop in terms of a naval base has been Djibouti. The rest are pretty much...
Yeah, even that is not fully developed.
Not fully, of course, yes.
Not fully developed. It is only for certain purposes.
If you look at the series...
And that base is just next to another American base and other bases.
Yeah.
It's not a free base. It's more for protection of oil and against piracy.
Sure.
Though their berthings indicate that they can put an aircraft carrier there.
As a matter of fact, if you come to Gwadar, whole different story with Pakistan. And
Gwadar is still very kacha. I don't know whether anyone will put any significant capacity out there with the kind of turmoil which is happening in Pakistan.
True. And then Hambantota, of course, very close to India.
Yeah.
The distances.
And Kaikafu, they have not made any headway with Myanmar the way it is. It's all chaos.
Apart from that, the land access, as I think we discussed one time before, the Shanghai Mandalay road, which is there, that is not very feasible for heavy traffic of.
Yeah, it's not very easy. All these places are not easy. For China to get the access into the Indian Ocean, it's going to take some doing. It's going to take some doing geopolitically, economically, and militarily. And with the kind of revisionism which is going on in China, as you know, just today I read 4-5 articles. It appears there are two groups in China emerging. One thought process is the Xi Mao thought process. The other thought process is the Deng, Hu Jintao, and Xi Jinping thought processes, which is being publicly aired in their, So it's not going to be an easy affair. Let's see how it evolves. In fact, the first line in Asia Nikki says there is something unusual happening in China.
I haven't read that, so I think I'm going to put my.
I'll give it to you. I'll send it across.
I'm going to put my eyes on that immediately.
Yeah.
If for people like us watching China, I think that's like breaking news with red banners and everything. So that also brings me to another question. In all the standoffs that it's had with India, starting from the 50s, I think every decade there's an example that we can talk about. Apart from the 62, which was an actual war, it's never ventured into the ocean. Is it that they were waiting for their navy to come up to a certain standard, and today, even in spite of the fact that they have the largest navy in the world, do you think they're in the capacity or the capability to come and actually create a standoff in the Indian Ocean?
I don't think they have the capability at this point of time. On the other hand, you have the capability to spoil their plans. Forget about, people talk of blockade, shockade and all. I don't believe that can happen. But you can upset their apple cart completely. If they do anything in the north, along the land border, you can finger them on the ocean. Conversely, if they do anything funny in the ocean, you can finger them on the north. So many people think that China is going to rough ride us. No, it's not going to do that. I don't think it has that capability, and they know it well. That is why at every stage they want to make, they want to mend fences with you. Of course, they want it their way. That's a different story. But they don't want to
antagonize India.
Yeah. And also remember, Russia has opened up its diplomacy with India now. Upped its diplomacy. It is also hedging its bets against China. USA and we are in a strategic partnership. Our strategic partnership is going stronger with Australia. A lot of other things are happening. So it's not going to be a cakewalk for China. But then, like I said, that's far too long away. First, let's see what happens to China. Maybe in the next thing we can talk about what's internal in China.
Sure, sir. Absolutely. I think that's something that we should cover in terms of that's going to control their strategic values and their this thing. So, last question. Navies are not something which you can just make and start sailing and doing stuff. I mean, India has a naval tradition going back 400-600 years, and even before that, if I'm mistaken, that way. The Cholas at one time had the largest navy in the world, and that's something. So the traditions are there. The traditions of sailing are there. The Britishers have a huge, long tradition. The Americans won a war in the Second World War, island hopping across, and that just proves your point about the basis that it is important. We don't see that with the Chinese. And how big a difference do you think that will make to their?
I think it makes a big difference, right? I mean, forget about Cholas and all that. Just go back to 71 war.
Yeah, of course.
We were able to blockade and bomb Karachi. We were able to blockade Dhaka and Chittagong and finish them off in Bangladesh. We've deployed aircraft carriers. We've carried out raids.
Offensive.
And right, we've also done an out-of-area intervention in Maldives.
True.
Right? It was a joint operation between Navy, Air Force, and So we have this operational experience, and you have a huge base in Indian and Andaman Nicobar,
and the others that fair enough.
Right? We've, mind you, take your memory back to 2004 tsunami. Tsunami hit us. Despite that, India went as part of the multinational force for humanitarian and disaster relief during the tsunami. That is where the Quad idea started.
True.
Right? So we have tremendous capacity. It's just we have to look inward and stop being negative about our thinking. I find a lot of people, they say, "Oh, China is going to do everything." What can China do? Let's see. They also know it. Have they done any one single operation?
Browbeating, probably. What's that?
So they have not done. They don't have that experience. It's going to take a long time. You speak to any guy who's operated as part of an aircraft carrier fleet. He will say, "Sir, it will take time. It will take at least a decade or two before you can deploy an aircraft carrier based fleet and operate it."
That too far
They
away
just got
from
this, and they just got one aircraft carrier, that too without full aircraft, and the second one doesn't have anything. It's not fully operational. From the time you launch the ship to it becoming operational itself takes 5 to 6 years.
It's a long drawn process, correct?
Yeah, it's a long run process.
Interesting sail through the Chinese waters, if I may put it that way. It's something that one must understand, because even with the mountain warfare video that we did, we realized that it's not all rosy on the other side as well. I mean, it's we may have our issues, but I think the field on the other side has more thorns, and one tends to actually make the same observation with regards to the maritime, if I may put it, dispute between India and China, although there isn't anything right now, but just for the heck of understanding. But it by what you're saying, it's, and as a layman, if you take your ship into, let's say, the South China Sea, you've got 15 guys behind you who don't like you and who could pretty much surround you with whatever navy they've got, and it's not something which is
it's not so easy.
Yeah. So you can cut off your supplies. You can, an aircraft carrier cannot function without the supplies. It can carry probably one supply.
It is the typical story of Gulliver and Lilliput.
Yeah, actually, it's not coming to my mind. You put it across very nicely. Thank you.
Right?
Yeah.
The Lilliputs will pin Gulliver down.
Yeah. So it can get actually pinned down in every damn step of the way. So that's one of the reasons I think I can now very clearly understand the desperation of Taiwan. He needs to do it. There is no two ways out of it. He needs to do it for his power projection abroad, and forget the power projection, for his own safety. As a matter of fact, he needs to push these guys away. So that's a similar tactic that you see with the Russians and the Ukrainians, where the Russians are trying to push back on the Ukrainians to keep the NATO away. I think these guys are doing a similar thing in the ocean to keep.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I think you got it on the head. You hit the nail on the head.
Thanks. I think thanks to you, because it's when one actually goes through this, one knows the maps and stuff like that, but the depth of the oceans, the reefs, and this and that, and that's come out really well. I think somebody who watches this video will be able to understand that entire thing. And thanks so much, sir. I think the next one we'll plan on something, what's happening inside China, which is going to change their strategic values. And please share me that article, because it's going to be, my hands are itching to read that now. Till next time, sir. Jai Hind.
Jai Hind, and thank you.